For once, everything was perfect. The string lights shimmered over the backyard, the scent of roasted lamb and buttered rolls drifted through the air, and laughter, real, deep laughter, rose like music. My son Daniel stood in the center of it all, tall and proud in his navy blue suit, shaking hands with relatives who had watched him grow up. My heart swelled as I looked at him, my Daniel, the first in our family to graduate college. I'd dreamed of this day for years, through every double shift, every dinner of instant noodles, every night I came home too tired to speak but still managed to slip tuition checks into the mailbox. I used to tell myself, just hold on until Daniel walks that stage. That would make it all worth it. And now, under the golden glow of summer lights, I thought, maybe I was right. Lena was by his side, glowing in a white dress that sparkled under the lanterns. She had a way of drawing attention effortlessly, like she'd been born in the light. Everyone seemed to love her. Her easy smile, the way she slipped compliments into conversations. Even I did at first. She brought color into Daniel's life, confidence too. But something in me, some quiet instinct, never fully relaxed around her. Her parents arrived late, stepping out of a polished black car. Her mother wore pearls. Her father's handshake was cool and distant. "You've done a lovely job," her mother said, eyes scanning the buffet table. "Very homey." She smiled as if it were a compliment, but something about the way she said homey made my stomach tighten. I caught a glimpse of Daniel's expression, embarrassed, apologetic. I brushed it off. Tonight wasn't about me. It was about him, about pride and love and new beginnings. As guests took their seats, I moved between tables, refilling drinks and accepting congratulations. "You must be so proud," they kept saying. And I was watching Daniel toast with his college friends, hearing him laugh freely. It was like watching the boy I'd raised finally step into his own life. Then Lena leaned in to kiss him, and I noticed the diamond glinting on her hand. It wasn't the small one Daniel had shown me weeks ago. This one was bigger, new. Did Daniel upgrade the ring? I asked quietly when she came over to thank me for the food. She smiled sweetly. "Oh, you know men. He just wants to make sure I have the best." I nodded, though something about her answer didn't sit right. Daniel couldn't afford that kind of ring. Not yet. Not with student loans looming. But before I could ask more, her father called her over, his voice firm. I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling building in my chest. Dinner flowed beautifully. The clink of glasses, the scent of jasmine from the garden, Daniel's speech thanking everyone for their support. When he said, "Especially my mom, who gave up everything for me," my throat tightened. I blinked back tears as the crowd clapped. Then Lena took the microphone. Her tone was light, teasing. "And to my soon-to-be husband, thank you for loving me even when I spend too much." Laughter rippled through the guests. I smiled weakly, pretending to laugh along, though her parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. The sun dipped below the trees, and fairy lights wrapped the garden in a soft glow. The music turned slow and sentimental. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let myself feel it, the peace of accomplishment, of a chapter closing beautifully. Then the sound shattered, a siren. At first, faint, so faint I thought it was in the distance, but it grew louder, closer. A red-blue flash sliced across the fence and my stomach dropped. Conversations hushed. Laughter faded into murmurs. 3 police officers entered the yard. The lead officer's gaze swept over the crowd before settling near the front table. "We're looking for a Miss Lena Ortega." Silence. "The kind that hurts your ears." Lena froze, her smile faltering. That's me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. The officer stepped forward. "You're under arrest for financial fraud and identity theft." "You have the right to remain silent." Gasps broke out like cracks in glass. Daniel shot to his feet. "What? No, there's a mistake!" He tried to reach her, but another officer blocked his path. Lena's mother covered her mouth. Her father stood rigid, face pale. The officers cuffed Lena's wrists. the metal glinting under the party lights. She looked around, wide-eyed, tears smudging her mascara. "Daniel, please, tell them! Tell them I didn't—" Daniel turned helplessly toward me, eyes searching for something. Guidance, reason, salvation. I couldn't move. My legs felt rooted in place. The sound of cameras clicking from a few guests made my skin crawl. "Ma'am," one officer said firmly, "please step aside." I didn't realize until later that I was standing between them and the gate. I stepped back slowly, my throat dry. Lena's parents began arguing, whispers turning to shouts. "You said it was handled," her mother hissed. Her father snapped, "Not here. Not now." Daniel followed them to the gate, shouting her name as they led her away. "Lena, I'll fix this." "I'll fix it." The siren lights painted everything in garish red and blue. The perfect night twisted into a nightmare tableau, the banner that read, "Congratulations, Daniel." Flapping weakly in the wind, paper plates scattered, guests whispering behind their hands. And me, just standing there, holding a half-empty glass of champagne that had gone flat. Someone touched my arm. "I'm so sorry," a neighbor murmured. "You couldn't have known." But the words didn't comfort me. They pierced me. You couldn't have known. Because maybe I should have. Maybe all those little things. The designer clothes, the evasive answers, the expensive ring. Maybe they were signs I ignored because I wanted my son to be happy. As the last car pulled away, I stayed in the yard, alone with the echo of sirens and shame. The lights still twinkled, stubbornly cheerful against the dark. It was supposed to be our proudest day. Instead, it became the night our name was whispered with pity. I looked at Daniel's abandoned plate, the uneaten slice of cake melting under the heat lamp, and whispered to no one, "For once, everything was perfect." Until it wasn't. And in that quiet, I realized something that chilled me more than the night air. This wasn't just Lena's unraveling. It was ours. The morning after the party, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, unread messages, and a thread of notifications that felt like thorns pricking my skin. I didn't have the courage to open them. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty champagne bottle from the night before. The glasses were still out, lipstick stains frozen in time, reminders of a celebration that had curdled overnight. Outside, I heard whispers, Mrs. Hanley from across the street talking to someone by the fence. Such a shame. The poor boy, and the mother. She seemed so proud. Their voices dipped when I stepped outside to take the trash. The pity in their eyes was unbearable. By noon, the news had spread beyond our little street. Cousins texted vague condolences, old friends sent awkward emojis, and Daniel, he hadn't come home. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. Those flashing lights, the shock on his face, Lena's trembling voice. Every frame burned behind my eyelids. Could I have stopped it? If I'd asked more questions? If I hadn't been so eager to see him made, so desperate for everything to finally look perfect? When he finally walked in that evening, he looked like a ghost, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. "She didn't do it," he said before I could speak. "It's a mistake. They'll sort it out." "Daniel, no, Mom." His voice cracked. "She's not like that. You don't know her." I wanted to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I didn't know that anymore. "Sweetheart, they don't arrest people for fun." "Maybe there's something you didn't—" He slammed his fist on the counter. "You always do this. You always assume the worst." His words sliced through me. "I'm just trying to protect you." From what? From loving someone. He turned away, breathing hard. "You don't get it. You've never trusted anyone but yourself." I wanted to tell him that wasn't true, that everything I'd done, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, had been for him. But the words caught in my throat. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe love to me had always been something you earned, not something freely given. 2 days later, the headlines appeared online. Local woman arrested in six-figure embezzlement case. Lena's name was there, bold and unforgiving. I read it 3 times. hoping the letters would rearrange themselves into something else. They didn't. When I went to the police station with Daniel, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He kept pacing, hands in his pockets, while I sat rigid in a plastic chair. They said she used her company's funds for personal expenses. He muttered, "It's ridiculous. She doesn't even care about money." I thought about her designer purse, the imported perfume she claimed a friend had given her. I thought about that ring, the one that just appeared. My stomach twisted. "Daniel, they said she falsified documents," I whispered. "That's not nothing." He glared at me. "You sound like everyone else." Looked at my son, my boy who used to bring me wilted daisies from the backyard and promised to take care of me someday, and realized I didn't recognize him anymore. Outside the station, reporters swarmed. "Are you related to the suspect? Did your son know?" Cameras flashed, questions like daggers. Daniel shoved past them, but I froze. Their lenses weren't just capturing her scandal. They were capturing our humiliation. That night, I sat in the dark, the house too quiet. Daniel locked himself in his room. I heard him crying once, muffled behind his door, and I wanted to go to him, but something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe fear that I'd say the wrong thing again. The following week, Lena's employer released a statement. The amount she'd stolen was staggering, over $200,000. They called it a deliberate act of deceit. My heart sank when I read it aloud. Daniel just shook his head, muttering, "They're lying." She was framed. I didn't argue. He was drowning in denial, and I didn't know how to pull him out. Days blurred into each other. People stopped calling. Even my sister's messages turned into short, uncomfortable check-ins. "How's Daniel holding up? Any news?" No one asked how I was. I'd become invisible again, just like before he graduated, before I thought we'd escaped all this. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the living room and found an old photo album on the shelf. Pictures of Daniel's first day of school, his high school graduation, the two of us smiling in front of our tiny apartment. We looked so happy, so certain that love and effort would be enough. But I'd taught him something dangerous, hadn't I? That success mattered more than peace. That being admired meant being safe. Maybe that's why he fell for Lena, because she sparkled with everything I thought we'd missed. A memory surfaced then. Last winter, when Lena had taken Daniel shopping for work clothes, she'd come home with armfuls of designer bags and said, laughing, "Don't worry, my boss gives me big bonuses." I'd smiled politely, even though my gut told me it didn't add up. Daniel had wrapped his arm around her and said, "She's amazing, Mom. She deserves nice things." I'd swallowed my doubt, afraid of being the bitter mother who ruined everything. Now, sitting in that same living room, I realized silence can be its own kind of guilt. A week later, Daniel received a call from one of Lena's lawyers. They needed to confirm his financial records. Apparently, she'd opened a joint account in his name. His face went pale. He whispered. "She wouldn't do that." I didn't say a word. After that, something in him broke. He stopped eating, stopped answering calls. The job offer he'd been waiting for, gone. "They said they're putting it on hold," he told me flatly. "They don't want bad press." I wanted to fix it, to call someone, to do something. But this wasn't a scraped knee or a missed curfew. This was a wound I couldn't bandage. A few days later, I found him sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. "Daniel," I said softly, "we'll get through this." He turned to me, his eyes hollow. "You don't get it, Mom. I loved her. And now everyone thinks I was part of it." I reached for his hand. "You're not responsible for her choices." He pulled away. "You just want to be right." "You always do." The words hit harder than any slap. I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched, disappearing into the night. When the door closed behind him, I stood there for a long time, the silence roaring in my ears. I'd wanted him to have everything I didn't: love, respect, a future untouched by struggle. But in chasing that dream, I'd lost him somewhere along the way. As the house dimmed into stillness, I whispered into the emptiness, "Maybe this is what pride costs. A family you can't recognize, and a truth you can't unhear. Section 3. Vindication and Release. When the mask falls, 1,000 words. By the time the trial began, the story had already gone stale for everyone else. Neighbors had moved on to fresher scandals, and the whispers had dulled into awkward small talk. But for us, the wound was still raw. The mornings felt heavier, the air inside the house thick with things unsaid. I went to court the first day alone. Daniel refused. He said he couldn't bear to see her like that. I didn't press him. A mother knows when her child is too broken to face the truth. The courtroom was cold, too bright. Lena sat at the defense table, her once perfect hair limp, her face pale beneath layers of makeup that couldn't hide the fatigue. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone, really. The prosecutor's voice was steady, clinical. Ms. Ortega falsified payroll records, forged signatures, and used Mr. Daniel Ortega's identity to apply for 3 separate personal loans totaling $80,000. My breath caught. Daniel's name, his identity, used like a prop in her scheme. The room spun for a moment, and I gripped the pew in front of me to steady myself. As they read through the evidence, the pieces of the past few months rearranged themselves into a picture I could finally see clearly. The fancy dinners. The new phone, she said, was a gift from work. The bank statements Daniel had brushed off. Every red flag I'd painted over with hope. When Lena finally spoke, her voice trembled. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said. I just wanted to give Daniel the life he deserved. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. That line lodged itself in my chest. Give Daniel the life he deserved. It was almost word for word what I'd told myself when I worked nights, when I sold my jewelry to pay tuition, when I forced a smile even when my heart ached. I realized with a sick sort of clarity that she wasn't just pretending for him. She was pretending for the same illusion I'd been chasing all along, the perfect picture. The judge's verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Lena was sentenced to 5 years in prison with restitution. When the gavel struck, the sound echoed through me. Not relief, not victory, but something quieter. Closure, maybe. As I walked out of the courthouse, cameras flashed again. Only this time I didn't flinch. I kept my head high. I had nothing left to hide. That night, Daniel came home. He didn't knock. He just walked in, as if he still belonged here. And maybe, finally, he did. His eyes were red-rimmed, his voice small. I saw the verdict. I nodded. I know. He sank onto the couch, his shoulders collapsing inward. I thought she loved me, he whispered. I sat beside him, close but not touching. She probably did in her own way. But sometimes love twisted with lies stops being love. He looked up at me then, really looked at me for the first time in months. You warned me. I didn't want to be right, I said softly. There was a long silence before he whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. The words cracked something open inside me. I reached out, taking his hand the way I used to when he was little. I know, I said. And I'm sorry, too. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing more. The apology wasn't a clean slate. It was a scar, visible, but healed. Over the next few weeks, life settled into something resembling peace. Daniel found part-time work while finishing his graduate applications. The laughter returned slowly, like sunlight after a long winter. But I was different. Something in me had shifted. For years, I'd built my worth on appearances, on being the mother who did everything right, who raised the perfect son. I'd thought dignity came from pride. I see now that it comes from truth. Sometimes I still catch my reflection in the window and think of that night. The lights, the sirens, the moment everything shattered. But now I understand that breaking was necessary. You can't rebuild on a false foundation. A few months later, I returned to the backyard where it all happened. The string lights were gone, the grass overgrown, but the air was still. I set a small table, poured myself tea, and sat in the same spot where I'd once stood humiliated. The silence was different this time. Back then, it felt suffocating, like judgment. Now, it felt like peace. I thought about Lena, not with anger, but with a strange pity. I wondered what she might have been if she hadn't believed she had to lie to be loved. Then I thought of myself and realized I'd done the same in smaller, quieter ways. Pretending to be fine, pretending not to need help, pretending that everything was perfect when it was just fragile. I smiled faintly. Sometimes, I whispered, losing face is how you find yourself. The wind rustled the trees, carrying away the last remnants of shame that had lived in this place. When Daniel came outside later, he found me sitting there smiling at nothing in particular. "You okay, Mom?" "For the first time in a long while," I said. "I really am." He sat beside me, and we watched the sun sink below the fence, the same fence where the sirens had glared months ago. Now the light was gentle, forgiving. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. The world hadn't given me the ending I once imagined, but it gave me something better, understanding. And in that moment, I knew that while Lena's mask had fallen in court, mine had fallen too, the mask of pride, of performance, of needing to be admired. What replaced it wasn't perfection, it was peace. Because in the end, I learned that dignity doesn't come from never falling. It comes from standing up, steady, and knowing who you are when the lights go out. Not every downfall is a punishment. Some are awakenings. When truth shatters illusion, dignity is what remains. Sometimes life has to break us open to show us what was real all along. What would you have done if your child's fiancé was arrested at their own celebration? Defend them or walk away? Tell me in the comments below. If this story touched you, if you've ever had to rebuild after betrayal or reclaim your self-worth, subscribe for more true-to-life confessional dramas. Every story shared here honors the strength it takes to rise again. Your support keeps these voices alive.